share with them. Lonnie Johns, which I don't know a whole lot about, but I learned to love Lonnie over the day, and he got to speak several different times, and he has a lot of experience with the Alabama SWAT team and crisis intervention, a lot of things working with youth, and he had some really good thoughts and really good messages, and one of the sessions was just for parents and adults only while the kids were in class, and it was kind of a Q&A, and we had the opportunity to ask questions, and obviously one of the questions that was made or asked of Lonnie was, what do you think was the problem with the Lord's church today? What's the greatest problem? What's the greatest thing that we struggle with in the Lord's church? And without much hesitation, he said, the future. The future. I thought that was interesting, thinking about the future of the church and where we are with that, and especially at a youth conference. And as we look at Colossians chapter 3, I think it talks and speaks a lot about the future. It talks about the now, what's going on now. And it's talking about us. It's talking about our hearts and where we are. And I think it's an important passage. And if we don't get through the first 17 verses of Colossians this morning, read those. Read those to yourself as we go about this afternoon and all the activities and things that are going on. There was a young girl that went to a friend's house. It's a first grade friend. And they're sitting around the dinner table, and the mother says, do you like broccoli? They were serving buttered broccoli as a part of the vegetables. And I don't care how you dress it up, whether you put butter on it or steam it or put cheese on it or whatever, it still tastes like something you got out of your front yard. But she said, oh yes, I love broccoli. And so with a smile on her face, the mom passed the food around and everybody took what they wanted, and the little girl didn't take any broccoli. And the mom looks over and says, well, I thought you said you loved broccoli. Very politely, she said, oh, ma'am, I do love broccoli, just not enough to eat it. And I thought about that story, and I said, that is us. That is us in so many ways. And in reflecting on Colossians chapter 3, in chapter 3, the first 3 verses for sure, reflects on us. Oh, I love Jesus, like we sang this morning. I love that song at camp. When we go to camp, we have this tradition where one of the nights we turn off all the lights and the boys are on their side of the valley and the girls are on their side of the valley, and we sing to one another. One of the things we sing is, oh, girls, do you love Jesus? Oh, yes, we love Jesus. Are you sure you love Jesus? Oh, yes, we're sure we love Jesus, is the reply that comes back. Tell us why you love Jesus. This is why we love Jesus. Because he first loved us. Oh, I love Jesus, but not enough to do what I know I need to do. Oh, I love Jesus so much, but not enough to be here and to worship him and edify and uplift one another. Oh, I love Jesus, but. And I think Colossians chapter 3 speaks to the buts, the what ifs, the oh, fill in the blanks. Do we love Jesus? Do we love his church? Do we love our families? Do we love our marriages and our friends and our children and our brethren? Do we love them? Oh, yes, we love them. But just like the little girls, not enough to eat, not enough to be around it, not enough to make it a habit, not enough to fellowship, not enough to put our foot down when we know we need to. I want to look at Colossians chapter 3 because I think it's a blueprint and covers everything that we need to live a godly life if we will just follow Paul's words. That's all we have to do. And you look at it and you're like, is this me? Is this me? And we have to be honest with ourselves. If we're not honest with ourselves, it doesn't matter. The words of Paul don't matter. Imagine if we truly lived this way every single day. And I know some of you have already read these first 3 verses. Imagine if we lived this way individually, ourselves. Imagine if we lived this way as a family unit and parents raising children and children with respect to their parents, in our marriages and our friendships, in our getting along with our fellow brethren, dealing with our transgressions, our temptations. And obviously, what's interesting to me when Paul writes all these letters to the churches, you're like, he's just not sending the letter of, this is what you need to do. There's a problem. There is already a problem in these congregations. There's issues. They're not perfect. And Paul's addressing those issues specifically. And he's talking to them through his words. And as we see these struggles, it's like we need to start now. As an individual and as a church and as a family and as a brethren. But we need to start now. Or the future of the church is at risk. Verse 1. If then you were raised with Christ. If then tells me, as I'm reading this, that there may be situations where someone is not in Christ. Are you not in Christ this morning? As you sit there, as you listen, as you watch and observe, are you in Christ? If then you're in Christ, are you in Christ this morning? Or are you in Christ and maybe I love Jesus, but not enough to follow him? I love Jesus, but not enough to be here on a consistent basis. If something else comes up that I'd rather do. If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above. Can you get any clearer? Can you get more plain than to seek those things which are above? Or to set your heart. To set your heart on those things that are above, where Christ is sitting at the right hand of God, where Christ is. And if you're not in Christ, he even tells you. He tells you in chapter 2, verse 12, buried with him in baptism. Do it. Connect. Come in contact with the blood of Christ. So that you can be in Christ. And then to set your mind. Do we live every single day? Every single hour and every single minute of every day with our hearts set on him? Because I'm telling you, if we live, can you imagine? If we live that day like that, how would we change our relationships with one another? How will our relationship with our spouse would be, how our relationships in our dating lives would be. If you're thinking about the other person and you're thinking, I'm going to set my heart right with Christ. I'm going to set my heart right in everything I do, in everything I say, in anywhere I go. I'm going to set my heart right on Christ. I'm going to fix it there. Problem solved. Different mindset. And that's what he goes into. He's talking again, and he goes into verse 2. Set your mind. You set your heart. You put your heart where it needs to be. Now put your mind there too. I promise you, there will be a time where some miss out because of 18 inches. The 18 inches from here to here. And you're going to miss out. Knowing about Christ. Do we know about Christ? Do we live for Him? Have we set our mind on Him? And giving careful consideration, being intentional on the things that are above. If we set our mind on the things that are above and not on the things in this earth, what would change, people? What would change, church? How would we treat each other? If you went into the day and said any reaction or interaction I had with anybody was setting my mind first on Christ and my heart on Him, what would change? Set your mind on the things above, not on the things of the earth. And in verse 3, for you died. You died. You died. And your life is hidden with Christ in God. Set your life on Him. Set your heart, set your mind, and set your life on Him. Period. Think those three things. But we can't do it. We don't do it. We don't want to do it. For your life will be hidden. I remember walking into the building one day and the sun's behind me and the little Everett Townsend was standing to the side. And it was both of our shadows looking right there on the concrete. And then he moved behind me and he was gone. He was like, look, I disappeared. Hidden. Hidden with Christ. So we're seeing His shadow. We're seeing His will for our life. We're seeing His will, not ours. We're hidden. We stepped to follow Him. And it's no longer us that we see, but Him. Even in James chapter 3, in those verses of 14 through 18, is great examples where he starts listing all these things with bitter envy and self-seeking heart and boasting and lying. Where self-seeking exists, confusion and evil results. In verses 17 and 18 talks about wisdom from above and purity and peace and gentleness and willing to yield oneself. And to be full of mercy and good fruits and no partiality and no hypocrisy. Righteousness is sown. And those are the things that you get when you set your mind and your heart and your life on Christ. You get purity. You get peace. You get gentleness. You get willingness and mercy and no hypocrisy. For when Christ, verse 4, who is our life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. And then he goes into verse 5 and talks about when we don't live for him. Verse 5, therefore put to death your members, the things that are a part of you that are on this earth. Fornication and uncleanliness and passions and evil desires and covetousness and idolatry. All those things that are a part of us, you died to that. You died to that. And I want to make sure that I mention in verse 7, we'll close after verse 7, I promise. In which you yourselves once walked when you lived in them. When you died to self, you died to self. And you are hidden in Christ. You no longer partake in those things. But isn't it encouraging to know that all of these things, the fornication, the uncleanness, the passions, the evil desires, the covetousness, all of those things, which fornication includes homosexuality. The choice, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I was born that way. Verse 7 says, you once were like that. You yourselves walked that way. You once were, which means you can change. You can change. You have a choice. And whatever of these that we're involved in, we have a choice. If we set our mind, set our heart, set our life on Christ, we have a choice to change. That's our former life. That's our former way of doing things, but now we walk differently in Christ. What a message. What a message. You keep reading all the way through, and you think about those 17 verses, and you think about, see, I just went through 5 pages of notes, just like that. But that's not the important part. If you think about living that way, if we will decide every day when we wake up, we have one single thing to do, wouldn't that make life just amazing? If as soon as that alarm clock went off, we got out of bed and we have one thing to do. That's it. One thing all day. We do. We do. One thing we have to do is to follow Him. That's it. You follow Him in your relationships at school, at work, every day, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, your whatever. You wake up and you say that, I have one thing to do today, and it's to follow Him. And you watch how your day changes. If you stick to it. If you keep it in focus. And you don't veer off and get sidetracked. And you make every decision, every choice, everything that comes out of your mouth that day is about Him. I choose today to follow Him. Everything else will fall into place. Even the challenges, even the valleys, even the roadblocks, all of those things, the closed doors that we think that were closed because we did something, they will fall in place with Him. Without Him, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. what path we will go down, what direction we're headed, if we don't have our mind and our heart and our lives connected to Him. As we started, if then you were raised with Christ, now what? Now what? It's our choice. It's our decision. And it's our future. If there's anything we can do this morning, have the song selected. I have decided to follow Jesus. Oh, I love broccoli, but not enough to eat it. Oh, how I love Jesus, but not enough to do what He's telling me to do. I have decided to follow Jesus. Really? My cross I'll carry till I see Jesus. Will you? The cross before me and the world behind me. Really? Is that what we're doing? Is that how we're living? Does that control our everyday? If there's anything you need this morning, please come as we stand and sing.